Good morning.
Good morning.
So it's a holiday weekend, and so you all don't have to be anywhere tomorrow. So it's not only a good morning, it's a good evening. For our president, Andres, in fact, every day is going to be a good weekend day because he retired last week from Chicago Police Department after many years. So congratulations to our church president. So today's sermon, I wanted to call Who's the Boss? But most people don't like the boss. So I thought that's not a good name. So I changed my mind. And I wanted to talk about work. And what's your work? So first, though, let's think about what do you think of when you think of Labor Day? What do you think of? Probably barbecues and cookouts, maybe a parade or a festival. It's generally a day spent not working. Some think it's the last day to wear white. But Labor Day's history dates back to the late 1800s, and if you've been to the Chicago History Museum, it has great exhibits. One is how activists protested violently about working conditions. I'm sure some of you know that in 1886 there was a large deadly riot called the Haymarket Affair. And here in Chicago and all across the country, people were working like 12, 14, 16-hour days, and they had no rights. So here in Chicago, people organized and had strikes and protests and demonstrations. And even the Chicago Police Department had a federation of organized trades and labor, and they protested. 8 people died and 7 of them were officers. There was a bombing, gunfire, and 7 were sentenced to death. And so our Windy City is the origin of the 8-hour workday. So I thought that was worth mentioning on Labor Day weekend. It wasn't until the 1890s that it became a federal holiday of Labor Day. So I'm not up here talking about a history lesson, but I am here to ask, what's your work? What's the work that you do? So when I ask, what's your work? You might be thinking your job with a paycheck. And if you are, you know what you do, and I'm guessing you probably do your work very well. So is that all there is to it? Is that what we're talking about today? Getting a salary, and that's our identity? But what about people who are retired? Or people who are differently abled and not getting paychecks? What about them? What's their work? The truth is that all people have work. Everyone has important things that they are doing, and we need them. So what is your work? Our pastor, Reverend Maurice Coverson, has been serving this church, the Church of the Spirit, for over 20 years. She's been an ordained minister and a spiritualist medium, and her work, do you think is coming here on Sundays and that's that? That's the small part of what she gives in her work. She is on the phone day and night with people. Why? Because they need her. She is there for them for whatever. And her work is to answer that phone when you call. So in a way, Reverend Coverson is your spiritual mother. Before her, there There was Ernst A. Schoenfeld, Paul and Joan's uncle. He was the Church of the Spirit pastor, and he was here, maybe 50 years. What was his work back in the day in this building? Well, guess what? I found a booklet that Reverend Schoenfeld wrote this summer when I was in Milwaukee at the Morris Pratt Institute in the bookstore. And I snagged it because that's my church. The booklet is entitled The Spiritualist Minister and His Work. So these are some of Reverend Schoenfeld's words in his book. The calling of a spiritualist minister is sacred. One who entertains any wish for himself, for self-aggrandizement or financial gain, will find himself sadly disappointed and failing in his purpose. The work is not easy. He may expect to be misunderstood, misinterpreted, and at times ridiculed. That sounds terrible. I had to stop and laugh because it's true. Reverend Schoenfeld was an honest man, but the work is worth it. And on the last page, he wrote something that is profound. He wrote, "Spiritualism is the greatest revelation the world has ever known. We are continuously conscious of the protection and guidance of the spirit world." Amen. Thank you, Reverend Schoenfeld and Reverend Coverson, for doing the work. So, back to you. What's your work? What is it that you do and that you do so well, whether or not you're getting paid for it? Let me do the honor of sharing some of what you do. Some of you have or are now caring for an ailing parent. Some of you are caring for both children and grandchildren. Some help school kids cope with stress. Others help obtain and get books to kids so that after school they stay out of danger and keep learning. And some of you are there for your family and your friends who are hurting and are really worried. And even some of you send money back to your family members at home. What's your work? Debbie and John cook and shop. And when they're lucky, someone helps clean up afterward. Dwayne comes first thing in the morning and makes the coffee. Sharice and Kate make our newsletter and our website and more. The board meets and figures out the building's budget. They're the leaders behind the scenes. And what about the people at Spirit Fest? And all of you who came during and after COVID and cleaned this building with your masks on. And the ones who pulled the weeds in the garden until your hands were chapped and raw, or took the garbage out, donated a laptop, called the contractors for the PA system. So I say this, you are doing work. You have done work. And you will do work in the future because we are together sharing in this belief, in this church and the philosophy and the science and the religion of spiritualism in our community. We care about each other. So I just want to stop for a minute and say, some of you hearing this right now are feeling guilty and you're thinking, ooh, I haven't done anything. Ooh, I feel bad. This speech is not for me. This is not my sermon. This is not my favorite. Well, let me just tell you one thing. When it comes to what is your work, you may not think that you have done enough, and you might feel badly that you could be doing more. But I can tell you this, if you can hear the sound of my voice, I can assure you that you are making a difference, because you are each the spark of the divine. And you go about your day, day after day, and you bring that spark with you in small ways. You just show up in your day. You wake up and you show up. That is profound, the work that you do, showing up. That's work. Some days you hurt and you don't feel good and you don't want to do it, and you take a shower and you get there. And it takes work just to exist, just to pay the bills, just to fill up just to be on time and meet all the needs. That is a lot. And it's work. So acknowledge your role and the work that you do, because you make a difference in such big and small yet profound ways. Let me give you a quick story. Many of you have heard the account from the Golden Gate Bridge. This was back in the 1970s. So a man in his 30s jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. And when the investigators were done, they found back in his bureau at home a note that read, "I am going to walk to the bridge. If at least one person smiles at me on the way, I will not jump." I never forgot that story. Now, to be clear, no one is ever to blame for someone hurting themselves. It's not our fault. It's not anyone's fault, because we cannot prevent or control anyone else's behaviors ever. But still, knowing that a small thing that was written about in that note, I remember that story, and I think to myself, maybe you would do something differently for your own reason, and that's just as valid. But I think for myself, if I walked by that man and I could have prevented that by giving him a sign, that would have been meaningful. So I call you to look at remember the principle, spiritualist principle number 7, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The golden rule and the Golden Gate Bridge. Just think about uplifting the humans on your path, because they may need you to do that work more than you could ever know. And they may never even say thank you, but in their eyes, just for a second, you might see the feeling of thank you or something that resonated. And you might need that grace too. I know that I need that once in a while. I need on some days to see loving kindness from another person. So as I close, I wanted to just say that your work might be that paying job that feeds you and provides for others and it can be very meaningful, and I'm sure it is. And your work, in addition or as well, can be tending to the emotional wounds of friends and family that are hurt, or the work that you do here at the church, just showing up on a Sunday or coming to the Zoom. That makes the person sitting right next to you or Zooming next to you feel like you're a part of them and they are a part of you, and you are. And all the work you're doing in many days will just keep making life better for others and for yourself. So if you can, try to keep simple thoughts in your mind, like, I appreciate you, or a few words, that was so kind, or just the expression on your face when someone glances your way, someone you may never have seen before and you may never see again. You can surprise them with an expression that is warm, and it might be confusing to them. They might think, do I know you from somewhere? But maybe you were just doing work, showing up for another soul, to change their mind before they reach their bridge, whatever that bridge is. So next time people talk about work and you start to think, oh, I don't have a job, I want you to know that you do have a very important job. And when you reflect tomorrow on Labor Day, just remember what Mother Teresa said: a miracle isn't doing work for others, it's being happy to do the work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.